Glad to be here today, and I thank you for inviting me. I love to speak to all you young, good-looking fellas from the service, and I'm so proud of each and every one of you. It's really an honor for me to be here. I'm just an old pilot from World War II. I really had a wonderful time flying airplanes. As I told the people here, when we get out of the service, when we got home, nobody heard about us. Nobody wanted women pilots. So I didn't know I was lost, but they found me in 1992. And I'm so glad they found me because I'm having such a good time. I've been to 24 states and I give programs all over. Sometimes the states even ask me back. But I want you to know it's really a pleasure to be here today. First, I'll tell you a little bit about the service. Oh, I'll tell you first a little bit about me. There I am. You see, I'll be 90 years old in November, so these pictures need a lot of help. But anyway, that's my mom and dad. I was the fifth in a family of 6 kids. We had 1 boy and 5 girls. So we had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful childhood. We were so poor, but I didn't know we were poor. I just had a good time doing whatever I was doing. Anyway, we found our own fun at home. And my daddy, God bless him, he had a heart attack before he sold his 2 farms. And so luckily, when he came to town, he did buy a home. Do you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we're
good. If you don't hear me, hold your hand up, because I want you to hear me. Anyway, so Daddy had sold 2 farms, so he had a lot of money. Thankfully, he came to town and bought a home, a lovely big home, because he had, at that time, he only had 5 children, but then there were 6 children. And so, and then he put the money that he had left in the bank. Well, the bank went broke in 1929, and he lost all his money. You know, he never trusted, of course, he didn't have much money to put anywhere, but anyway, he never trusted the banks again. And it was kind of sad. We were fortunate, though. Our daddy had bought the house because many of our friends, I thought, oh, isn't that fun? They move every other week or something. And the reason is because they didn't have the money to pay the rent, and they'd have to leave wherever they were staying. So it was really tough times during those years, late 29s and 30s. But as I say, I had a great time growing up. And as a young gal, I always used to climb trees, and I'd be the one swinging from the top of a roof across the beautiful land we had. I did swing in a swing, and my brother and his buddy said, "I bet you're afraid to jump when we say jump." Well, I'm not afraid to jump. I jumped and broke my arm. But that's the way it was those years. We had a wonderful time. And then, as I got out of high school in 1939, I bought a bicycle. You see, those years we had no radio, we didn't have a telephone, we didn't have a car, and so I went and bought a bicycle as soon as I got a job, and that was great. So I didn't go much further than how far I could bike. Went to Kenyon and North Notana. That's about the size of my traveling. But as I say, I didn't mind at all. And when I got out of high school in 39, I was fortunate. I had a job at the local Register of Deeds. I was the Deputy Register of Deeds. I did a lot of typing. And so typing, you know, bang, bang, bang on something that was like a, whatever they call those, teletype. It was real, yeah, but it isn't anything like the communication of today. But I typed all the instruments that were brought into me. Well, there was a young man that owned the implement company. His name was Matichek. And he used to talk about flying. I thought, flying? That sounds like fun. And he saw I was interested, so after the second visit at the courthouse, he said, well, would you like to take a flight? Oh, would I ever like to take a flight? So he brought me out to the local airport, and I went up with this young man. And he loved to give people flights. He'd take them up and give them a spin, and then they'd have to land. But anyway, he went up 3,500 feet into a spin. He turned around and looked. I said, one more time? After 10 more times, he didn't look around anymore. He landed that airplane. He looked a little green. He said, you know, whatever you do, you got to take up flying. He said, every other person I took up flying and did a spin, they got sick. He said, you're the only one that's made me sick. So for me, it was love at first flight. And that's what happened to me. And I knew I had to fly airplanes. Well, so I'd go out to the local airport. There was a membership. We had 15 fellows in the membership, and I used to go out there, and if they needed somebody for ballast, I'd sit in the back seat for them, or I'd sweep the little floor they had, or I'd do anything I could, so somebody asked me to fly with them. And so finally, one of the fellows left for the Air Force. This was in 1943, and he left for the Air Force, and they said, now, Betty, you can join. I said, oh, well, good. What does it take? Only takes $100. $100? I never saw $100 all one piece in all my life. So he said, I said, well, I heard the bankers loan money. So I went down to the local banker and I said, Mr. Call, I want to borrow $100. $100, Miss Wall? What do you need that much for? Well, I'm going to join the Sky Club. Oh, he said, women don't fly. I said, this one's going to. So, by golly, he got the papers. And you know, he co-signed my note and he took my bicycle for collateral. And it was just great. You see, he knew our family. He knew we were poor, but he also knew we were honest, so he trusted me. And so I'd bring my $5 a month every now and then, finally got it paid. Anyway, so I got back and started flying the little Piper Cub. We had a 65 horsepower Cub. It was great. And so I heard that there was an organization called Women's Service Pilots that were looking for women who would that would relieve the men for combat, because as you know, we got bombed very suddenly, and nobody thought of having any kind of preparation, and so they needed the pilots who could fly to be the combat pilots. And you know, those guys, they didn't know anything about combat. They just went to war and they fought and they did such a wonderful job. They had no training. They just took off, went over there. We had no simulators to find out how an airplane flew. You have to get up, take it up, find out what it did. That was interesting. Anyway, so I went down to Sweetwater, Texas. We did have 3 of us from our home to go down there. My sister Mary, but she didn't like, God bless her, she couldn't do any spins. As soon as she'd go into a spin, she'd shut her eyes. Well, you had to go to do spins to get out of the primary training. And my instructor, he was the same instructor as her pilot, her instructor is mine. And so I said, you know, I feel so badly, but I'm going to have to just have Mary go home, because she cannot fly airplanes, because I know that she would crash if she got into a spin. And we had to do acrobatics before we got out of primary training. Of course, I thought it was great. Anyway, so we went into the primary. In our primary, we had I better watch and see what he's doing here. Well, these are the 3 women that did help us, the three people that helped us become women pilots. Eleanor Roosevelt was the president's wife at the time, and she said it was time that women did something like this. And of course, Jacqueline Cochran, she was a wonderful aviatrix. She'd won many, many awards and many records. And she was our like a CEO. And there's General Hap Arnold. And oh, General Hap Arnold was such a nice guy. He really went to bat for us women pilots, and that's how we got to fly the airplanes. And there's myself, Catherine Murphy, and my dear sister Mary. God bless them. And that's was in Sweetwater, Texas. And the West Texas, it was such a wonderful place. People in Texas were so nice. I really enjoyed those people. That's the Aviation Enterprise. That's what it was called. And that field, I was flying out of this little old airport in Faribault, Minnesota. If you went up or down one way, up in Orlando the other way, you'd have to go up or under the wires. The other time, you always had to go crosswind. It was wonderful. But you know, after landing in that little old airfield, seeing this field, oh boy, I'll tell you, I had no problems. And there we are in our zoot suits. You see, this place where we were trained, it was a Avenger Field, but it was for the ROTC, the English pilots, and they were training there. And so they left all the uniforms that they had. They left them there. And so if you got to the place in time, to the laundry, you'd get them looking like that. Otherwise, they'd be too big. We'd yank them up, tuck them in, running. We didn't care, though. We wanted to fly airplanes. We didn't care what they gave us to wear. And also, those are our winter uniforms. And you know, you know how it is, the higher you go, the colder it gets. And we were flying a lot of open cockpit aircraft. And so those are those are the winter suits, but you had to wear suspenders to hold the pants up and lots of socks to hold the boots on. Well, we didn't care what they gave us to wear. We wanted to fly. And you see those turbans around our head? You see, when we get in an airplane, our hair would be flowing in the back, and they always felt that it might disturb, because we always had men that were instructors. We didn't want to, obstruct the boys or whatever in the back seat, so we had to wear turbans to hide our hair. And when we went into the service, we took the oath of the military, and we were under orders at all time, and we flew the airplanes of the service, and we thought we were to be a part of the Air Force. That's the way it was. Anyway, we did the PT in the morning, you up 2, 3, 4, and that's our mess hall. We had a good 3 squares a day. I liked everything they gave us. And this is our ground school. We had ground school a half a day and flying the other half, and then we had 2 flights, and we'd trade whatever. And that's my classmate, but you know what? I'm sitting on the other side of the room, and I didn't even have a camera those days, so I had to get somebody else's pictures. But you know that ground school, you see, you could either have a private license or 35 hours of flying time. I never waited around to get a private license. I got my 35 hours of flying time and headed down to Texas. Heck, if it was a nice day, I'd fly. I wouldn't worry about the weather. It was just great. And, jeez, you had to learn physics. I thought that was something you took for stomachache. I didn't know it was something you took to learn to fly airplanes. So it was really tough because I had and when I was in school, you had to take typing or shorthand or bookkeeping. You couldn't go into anything else. I'd rather be in the shop or something, doing something different, but that's the way it was those years. We had to do what girls did. That's okay. And so this shows some of the times we had. And that's the thanks. The Morse code, that's the way we communicated. And that shows our little map for the airport to show how to get back onto there. They're fixing the airplanes. That's our, that's that physics, I thought. That's what I meant to me. And that's our gal just getting together there. That's when we were in the engines. And there's a little L5. We did some flying in the L5. That was a nice little airplane. Went awful slow, but it was kind of fun to fly. Oh, the steerman, I like that. That was very acrobatic. You could do lots of tricks with that. And that was open cockpit. And there's our open cockpit, PT-19. That was our primary trainer. It was great. And that's our BT-13, and that was nice. We even had a canopy over our head, and that was pretty neat. But then we went into, we didn't go there. Anyway, that shows going cross-country. And our BT, we did a lot of cross-country because we weren't sure if we were going into ferrying or into trading, so they wanted us prepared for whatever we were doing. There's the AT-6. I had a love affair with that aircraft. Back between basic and advanced flying, I had a guy who had an airplane back home, and he came down to see me. He said, now you can fly those airplanes. Now you come home and get married. I said, well, I don't know about that. Well, he said, you flew all those airplanes, and I have an airplane. He had a little 65 horsepower coming home. But I said, well, I don't know. I kind of like the airplanes. Well, I talked for a day, and I thought, oh, what the heck, I guess I could go home. So I went in to see, I said, I'll meet you down in Kansas City in 2 days, because I said I have to turn in all my equipment, say goodbye to all my friends, and all my beautiful airplanes before I left. And so he said, okay, I'll meet you in Kansas City in 2 days. I said, okay. I went in to see Miss Deaton. She was our CEO at the time, and I said, Miss Deaton, I'm going to resign. You're going to resign, Betty? And she looked at all you're doing so well flying, boy. I did great in flying, but ground school was really tough for me. But I knew if I was going to fly airplanes, I had to get all those courses right, and I worked hard. I just passed, too. Anyway, she looked, and she said, well, you're doing so great in flying. And she thought, well, you are passing your ground school. And she said, if you want to resign, that's up to you. But before you sign this slip, I want you to get a flight in that AT-6. I got a flight in that AT-6. I come down from that aircraft. I called up that boy. I'm not coming home, I said. He said, if you don't come home, I'm going to go home and marry somebody else. I said, you go right ahead. And he did, and we both lived happily ever after. And that's some girls from my class, too. Just shows there was a movie star. She was an opera star. She was a Broadway star. The other two had big jobs somewhere. And then there were people like me. And that's our transportation. It was an old cattle truck. And believe me, it was a cattle truck. We cleaned it out pretty good, and they put two big long boards on the sides, and we'd get in there and sit down. And you know, I never knew. They would lock the door when we got in. I don't know what they locked the door for, because none of us wanted to leave. Because we had all our girls flying off of one field, usually the fellows went to one field for primary, another for basic, and a third for advanced flying. But because we only had the one field, so they had the girls that were the higher classes, because we had all our classes in one field. We had 8 classes at one time. And so we had to go to auxiliary fields to do all our cross country and stuff, so that we wouldn't be bothering the big shots, the big gals, you know, that were going to be getting their wings. And you know, it snowed in Texas. They said it snowed, ha ha ha. Being from Minnesota, it really didn't snow. They didn't even enough make snow for our freestanding lady. Can you tell she's a lady, huh? And there's our little pool there. That's still there in Sweetwater, Texas. Now we have a beautiful statue of a wasp in the center. But there was, when our girls, one of the girls would solo, we'd all go over to the little pond there and we'd throw them in, but we'd pull them out again. That's my sister Julianne, and she was the one older than I. She'd passed away in December 04. But she was my buddy. She used to come and visit me. She used to come and stay at the field, and we used to have such good times. God bless her. And you know, I don't even know who that girl is, but I liked her attitude toward that lieutenant. They used to scare the hell out of us, you know, because they would, I swore they tried to wash us out. So if we got 2 pink slips, then you had to go up for a truck ride with them. And if they didn't like you, if they thought you did something wrong, they'd wash you out. So I was scared of them. I just liked that attitude, because I liked the way she treated them. We were scared. We had to do this all the time. And we had khaki slacks. They did give us the khaki slacks, so we had to buy all our own uniforms, because as of yet we were still civilians. And we had our own blouses. They did give us an overseas hat. And this was the graduation before us, and they didn't have, these gals that did graduate and just had those for our uniforms. When they would travel cross country with an airplane, you see, nobody knew there were women pilots, and so they landed at a place, and they'd have to, at those years, the planes didn't go that far without stopping for gas, and so they stopped for gas and overnight or something, and they'd have to stay in a hotel. There were no motels at that time. They'd have to stay in a hotel, and many of the places wouldn't allow the girls in because they didn't have slacks or a dress on, and so they felt, you know, you're not a lady. And so finally, Jacqueline Cochran said, "This is enough. We have to have some uniforms to identify us as women pilots." And then she got our Santiago blue uniforms, and I don't know if today, but a lot of the units have these Santiago blue uniforms. We're the first. And those are our wings. You see the diamond shape of the center. That was the signified women. You ever see a pair of them? That's women pilots of World War II. And there I could take that thing off my head and go show my hair. And if you didn't think I was a hot pilot, all you had to do is ask. And this was a group. This was our group. There were 8 of us. I don't know what happened to the other girl, but you're supposed to be in a skirt and a blouse for that photo. But I just got out of an airplane. Oh, come on, Betty! And I'm so glad, because it's one of the last pictures I've had with my buddies. And that's the way we taught instruments. You know, we'd hook them in. They couldn't get out until we unhooked them. And so they needed an instructor, so they sent me over to Vegas to get a little more instructions in instrument flying. And I came back, boy, I'm a hot shot instrument instructor. And this fellow was supposed to be flying with me. His name was Jim Lewson. Just called me up the other day. Anyway, he had a hell of a time finding me, too. He had to go through the Faribault airport. Anyway, because they changed my name so many times. And so this is the way we'd hook him in. And he was walking behind me, and he was really, really going slow. Here, he's 6 feet, and all he had was a parachute. I had 2 cushions and a parachute on me. And so I turned around to him, and I said, "You're afraid to fly with me?" He said, "Yes." Well, I said, "I'm not afraid to fly with you, Jim. Let's get in, and you can take off. But when we get up to 4,000 feet, I want control. When I wiggle that stick, get off it." So we went up 4,000 feet, and then I went into maneuvers like you can't believe. I did maneuvers I didn't even know, but I just wanted him to know whatever position he put that aircraft in, I could pull out of it. Oh, it's terrible. I had such an eagle. I guess I still do. Anyway, that was the teaching instruments. Those are just to show you some of the things I like to do. And there's a B-26. This fellow asked me about a B-26. I flew co-pilot a B-26. I wasn't tall enough. I was only 5'3". I shrunk. I'm only about 5 feet now. I don't go this way anymore. Anyway, the B-26, and it was a fun aircraft to fly once you got it in the air, but the taking off and the landing, the wings were too short. We no longer have a B-26. Our last one was crashed down right out of Oshkosh at one of our shows a long time ago. And we don't have any more, except in museums. And that's what I did with the B-26. We had this big tow rope and then that sleeve behind. And that sleeve was pretty well shot up. They shot at that with actual ammunition. The fellows would color their bullets. They had green and yellow and red and all those other colors. Anyway, and then whoever had the best shot that day, they could tell what the color was, so they knew who had the best shot. And the beast there's our, I used to love the dogfight between, we'd forget about the people down below, and we would be up there doing a little dogfighting. Isn't that terrible? Anyway, we had a good time. And this is what we did with the AT-6. We dive in, that's a B-24, but it was a B-20, doesn't matter. The Flying Fortress B-17. But anyway, then the fellas would be in their different little places to go to shoot at us, but thank God they had camera guns, but I'd love to get down on them. Oh, it was a lot of fun diving in at them. Anyway, I missed them too. They missed me. Anyway, then I flew the P-39, and that was a challenge. And as I said before, we had no simulators. You wanted to fly an airplane, you had to get in, take off, and find out what it did. Especially P-39, you don't have anybody with you. Well, I'd been flying the AT-6, and I was always on the flight line because I just loved to fly. I was only supposed to fly 4 hours a day, as was the fellas. They didn't know anything about G-forces at that time, but they just knew it wasn't good for a person to fly more than 4 hours a day in those positions. And so after 4 hours, I'd go back on the field and see if somebody didn't want me to take over their mission, because it didn't matter what they were flying, I could take it over. And so I'd have a good time taking all their missions, so I flew more than 4 hours a day, but it was okay. But I found out later I wasn't supposed to. Anyway, the P-39 was a really hot aircraft. And when I was going to check me out, this one fella said, "Oh, Betty, you'll have no trouble. He went through the checklist with me. It's just like any other airplane. You just got to watch your instruments." And I said, "Okay." So I got in, took off. And I got up, no, I'm just having the best time. I found out I did all kinds of maneuvers I wasn't supposed to do in a P-39. But anyway, it was just a lot of fun. And I was talking to the fella. I told him the only thing that worried me was this tricycle landing gear, because I'd been flying all tail draggers up until this time. And so the only thing that worried me was that tail rig, because I wouldn't know when to pull up the big the stick to land that aircraft. So he said, "Don't worry about it. I'll be on the radio and I'll talk you in." I said, "Okay, as soon as you get near the ground." Well, I got up there and having a good time, and I'm talking away to him, and all of a sudden my radio went dead. I thought, well, thanks, boys. Now what do I do? So I thought, well, I went up a little further, and I did some stalls, and I looked, and the wings are back here, the crankshaft is here, the propeller's in front of your nose and the engine's back here. And you know, it was kind of hard to see what I was going to be doing. I thought, well, if I just come down, I came down there lickety-cut. Thank God they had a long runway because I took the whole runway and I stopped at the very end. And my little friend, my fellow that wanted me to fly the P-39, he was running behind me in this little Jeep. He came up and pulled up beside me and I pulled, how do you like my landing, Marshall? Hell of a good landing. Why didn't you use your flaps? I shouldn't tell you that. That was a terrible mistake. But I did do okay. They let me fly again. So anyway, one time they needed somebody to go over to Indian Springs to do one of these missions. And I was always right there in case anybody wanted to use me to go to mission. I'd be available. So he said, okay, you can take the mission over to Indian Springs. Now, over Indian Springs, is, I'm sure you know, is north and kind of west of Las Vegas. They still use it as a gunnery place over there. And it was the same as diving in at the B-17. Same thing, diving in the B-17. The only thing different is it's on the ground. And okay. And I went in, I had to go in the office and sign a statement saying I wouldn't go below 500 feet. I thought they said 50. Anyway, I got over there, and it was facing the north, and I come up from the south, and I waited till I did miss the roof just. And when I got over, I changed the prop picture of an AT-6. Ever hear that? Oh, that's such a pretty sound. I turned around, and everybody hit the deck. So then I went up like the good pilot I was. I came in and I was doing my diving. I heard that they had the best score that day they ever had. They sure as hell wanted to knock that pilot out of the sky. Anyway, so I landed and I was running a little low on fuel, so I had to stop to get some gas before I went back to Vegas. And so when I stopped, this fellow was marching down the ramp. Oh, I could tell he was mad. His face was as red as his hair was. And you see, before I got off an airplane, I got a little comb. I got a little pocket down here. I have a comb and I have a lipstick. I get the comb out and I take my hat off and brush out my hair and take the lipstick, put a little, and then I jump on the wing and look down at him. And he's keep looking in the cockpit to see who's flying. He says, "Where's that pilot that flew that last mission?" Oh, I said, "I'm your pilot." I don't think he said what he was going to say when he saw it was me. He said, "I'm going to report you." I said, "So what did I do?" "You scared the out of my boys." "And where are your boys going from here?" "Well, they're going to combat, and I want them to live to get there." And I said, "You know what? I want them to live after they get there." I thought of that in a hurry. We became friends again, so they could. And then, December 20th, they said, "Thank you. Thank you, girls. You did a great job. Now you can all go home and lead a normal life." Lead a normal life? Leave those airplanes? Boy, that was pretty tough. You see, we were not military, and we never did become military, so we had to get our own way home. And we had to either buy the uniform or leave it there. I didn't have the money to buy the uniform. Anyway, that's the way it was. And they clipped our wings. And there's our girls marching away from the B-17, the pistol packing mama. And there was our last supper at Las Vegas. It was the last time I was with together. You see, at that time, we all, I think there's only one. Oh no, she died. She's dead. There's only 3 of us still living. The rest are all gone. God love them. And there was Shirley Slade. She was on the Life magazine in 1943, and that was the only time they said anything about women pilots, that they were flying the boys' airplanes. The boys didn't like that. And that's okay, you know. That was a sign of the times. And then I went into aircraft communications. There's me on the end. And these girls all had college degrees. I only had a high school education, but I was a commercial pilot, so they let me get aboard. It was great. I enjoyed it while I was doing it. I also got a commercial pilot certificate. You see, that's why when I went, oh yeah, I was going to tell you, I went to apply for Northwest Airlines when I get out of the service. Here, I had a commercial rating, I had a seaplane rating, and I flew bombers and pursuits. I mean, I said, "You give me any airplane you want me to fly, and I'll fly it for you." Well, they were very impressed. and they'd sure let me in their front office. I told them what they could do with their front office. So then I became a commuter trainee. This is out when I was out in Rollins, Wyoming. Have you ever been to Rollins, Wyoming? No. Don't go. Shame on me. Anyway, that was in Rollins, Wyoming. And I did a little archery. I taught art. You see, I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to go back to an office after flying airplanes. Glory be to God, that was terrible. So I was an archery instructor for the Starlets out in California for a while. I didn't know a thing about archery. I'd go at night and find out what to do with the bow and what to do with whatever. Anyway, the bow and the arrow. Anyway, I found out what to do, and then I could teach the archery for a while, but I wasn't making any money, so I had to quit that and go get a job. And then I finally came home, and I met my old boyfriend that I went to school with, and we got married. And I was very, very fortunate. I had 5 wonderful children. I have 4 boys and a girl, and my Pat is he's my middle boy, my middle child. I have 2 older, 2 younger. Anyway, and I had a wonderful life. That's when I worked for Al Honey in the Register of Deeds office. And the best thing that ever happened to me is I lost an election. I ran for election for the Register of Deeds. Heck, I'd worked for that Register of Deeds for 8 years off and on, 5 years steady, and then 3 years when I was just helping out. So I could run that office. It wasn't hard at all. I did abstracting and everything. But then I thought I was pretty experienced, qualified, and efficient. But nobody wanted me. They didn't want another woman in the courthouse. That's okay. That's the way it was. Well, then I had been a volunteer for the Cancer Society for 15 years. After I got out of the service, I started working for the Cancer Society. My dear mother and my sister Mary, they both had cancer, and they both lived 15 years with their cancer. Mary died 5 years after Mama did, but they had it for 15 years, and we were grateful for that. And so I thought I'd like to go work for the society, so I did a research for them. It was called Cancer Prevention Study. In fact, I just filled one form out the other day for them. And I went to New York. Well, my Pat and Mike were up in Boston. I didn't trust Pat and Mike in Boston. I wasn't hearing from them. I lost my dear husband. He was only 50 years old in 1969. And so I didn't want anything to happen to my boys, so I worried about them. So that's when I went to see them in Boston. So the fellow from New York said, why don't you stop and see what you did for the Cancer Society with that research study? I said, sure. And so Mary Lou and I went to see the cancer office. Well, when this epidemiologist, it took me a while to say that word. Anyway, when he found out that I'd been a pilot during World War II and flew bombers and pursued aircraft, he wanted me and his staff. I didn't have to write a resume. I didn't have to give all my qualifications or my non-qualifications or whatever. He just hired me. He said, would you like to come to work in the head office? I said, sure. So as I say, every knock I've had has been a boost to me. And then when I was working out in New York, I kept in touch with my women pilots, and they were decided we were going to go to Washington to show that we were entitled to veterans' rights, because when we went in, we had to sign a declaration saying that we'd be a part of the Air Force. And you see, we were Air Force before there was an Air Force. It was Air Corps when I went in, but we were Air Force first again. Anyway, I went to Washington. I happened to have my uniform with me. I always carry my uniform just in case somebody wanted me to talk. All they got to do is, I didn't have to twist my arm. Anyway, that's a gal from Boston and her, Margaret Heckler, and her assistant. And they were 2 of the gals who helped us. And Barry Goldwater was very good. He helped us. And his son, well, whatever his name was, he helped us too. And there's our gals at one of the air shows. Oh, we had a good time, I tell you. When we get together, we'd sure have a good time. Well, then in 1992, as I say, this gal came knocking on my door, and she asked if I was a woman pilot. I said, well, yes, I was. And she said, can you tell me a little bit about what? I said, what do you want to know? And so I started telling, you see, I say that's the day I brought it all out of the closet. So I had everything in the closet because I told my kids, throw it in the coffin when I die because nobody was interested in what I did so long ago. And so I brought everything out, and she was so excited. And she saw all the pictures I had, and I had my uniform, and she said, oh, you have to start giving programs. I said, I'm not a public speaker. She said, doesn't matter. You got a story to tell. You got to tell a story. So I've been on the road ever since '92. Wonderful. Anyway, so I was at the air show. This is when we were over at Home and Field right here. And the fellas flew me in the AT. They let me fly the AT-6 from Faribault up here. It was the first time I'd been in one in 50 years, and it was a real exciting time for me. And I appreciated letting me fly it. Oh, it was so good. They brought me up to the front of the audience with the airplane parked right in front, and two good-looking men came to help me off the wing. Heck, I could have jumped off, but I waited for them to help me. Take all the advantages I can. Anyway, and you can see that I'm not too unhappy about that. I just love being with those commemorative Air Force. It used to be Confederate, but politically correct, it has to be community. Big deal. Anyway, that's when I went to Northwest Airlines. You know, they didn't want me to fly them. And now they asked me to come back and give a program. I thought, boy, here's my chance. So I went back to Northwest to give them my program. And this guy, Terry Marsh, that's right. And that in the middle there is Sandy Anderson. She's one of the first women to fly military aircraft. I didn't mean to be flying commercial airline. And I was very proud of Sandy. She and I became very good friends. Well, anyway, you see those buttons and those windows and everything else? So I get in this simulator, and I said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do slow roll. I mean, you know, what the heck? So then we did a few things, and he landed the airplane, then he backed it up, and he said, okay, hotshot, let's see you land it. I said, well, tell me what, I didn't know anything about all those buttons and windows and dials. I said, well, what speed does this craft land at? And he told me. I held it on that speed, and I waited till I thought, well, it's getting pretty close. And I broke I just got in just beautifully. I just smooth as could be. And I don't believe that. That must have been an accident. I did it 3 times, and I did it 3 times. God was my co-pilot that day, but I tell you, I did it. Anyway, he said, I couldn't believe it, but you really could fly these airplanes. That's what I told you boys a long time ago. Nobody believed me. I believe you. So anyway, well, then Eugene Andreotti was at one of the air shows, and he said, you ever been on a jet? I said, what do you mean? You wouldn't let me near a jet. Well, he says, would you like to fly on the jet? I said, of course I would. F-16, I mean, really. So he said, well, you go home and tell me why you want to fly in a jet. I went home and wrote and told him why I thought I should fly in a jet. If I could fly the fighters of, oh, I tell you, if I could fly the fighters of World War II, why can't I fly the fighters of today? At least give it a go. So he had to get permission from the Pentagon because in '92, women were not allowed to fly combat in that aircraft. And so he said, but he believed that women could fly it, so he said I should, that he thought he could get permission. So I didn't hear for 2 weeks, and he forgot about me. He finally called and he says, well, he says, I got permission. When do you want to go? I said, tomorrow. Boy, I wasn't going to wait around for that invitation. Anyway, I went up to Duluth. That's where they had their plane. And so I went in, and the doctor took me in. I was supposed to get all this information and all these tests before I got in the F-16. And I went in and talked to the doctor, found, heck, he says, there's nothing wrong with you. You could fly it. I said, well, good. You know, that's great. That's what I was telling you. I'm okay. So anyway, they got me up there, and they put me in their I got into all their equipment. You see, I had to wear their equipment because it's all flame resistant. I had a flight suit on myself, but they said I had to wear theirs. It was great. When I was trying, they showed me this cockpit, kind of a small cockpit before I got in to show me what I was seeing. I didn't know a thing about it, but it was great. Anyway, and this one little guy was standing next to me. He was one of the reporters, because my Eugene Andreotti asked if he minded I have a little bit of publicity. I said, heck, I don't care who you bring out. I want to fly that airplane. They had television and papers. I was on the front page of the Minneapolis Star. Anyway, this old wild woman was flying on F-16. Anyway, and so he was just awfully great to me. Yeah, see, that is me in the back seat. Ray Kozlowski was my pilot, and he was a darling. You know, 20,000 feet, 25,000 feet, just like that. I have this G-suit, you know, on. And he said, he flew around for a while. We did all kinds of maneuvers. He did maneuvers I didn't even know. It was wonderful. Anyway, then he said, do you want to fly? I said, sure. He puts his hand up, and I said, well, I'll do a gentle turn. You see, there's that stick moved that much, you know, my warbirds, you know? I said, I'll do a gentle turn. 6 G's, just like that. The old suit blew up like a balloon. And he got his hands down. He said, take it easy. I don't have the brown bag in front. I said, honey, you can have mine because I don't need it. I kid him about that now. And then when I got out, I tell you, have I had a good time since they found me in '92. I've been to 24 states. They even ask me back sometime. It's wonderful. And they fly me in, you know, fly me home again. I'm staying in beautiful places. But I got to tell you, this last time, I was invited to be one of the Eagles down at Maxwell Air Force Base. To me, this is the ultimate. This is the ultimate for an aviation person. And they out of 600 veterans, they chose me. I just don't understand it. Here, I'll pass it around, let you see it. Boy, is that neat. And it was a group of about 125. They were all majors, and this is their project. They have a gathering of the Eagles. That's what they do during their year of, besides all their studies that they take. This is their project, is to have the Gathering of the Eagles program. And they invite 14 veterans from all over the world. This aviation school everybody been there at Maxwell Air Force Base? 60 countries that are recognized there, and they have students from all over the world. They're wonderful. And I had such a good time. Oh, I got my book. Where'd my book go, Patrick?
On a table.
On a table. Okay. Well, anyway, I'd like you just to check in my book, because I had 13 wonderful heroes, and then me. It was just so wonderful. I am so appreciative of what they did for me. And they let me take 10 of my family with me. In fact, we had more family than anybody else. And so they call it the Strohfus family. My name is Strohfus. They call it the Strohfus family because there was Roberts, and there was Reed, and there were all different kinds of Bell, and all different kinds of names. So the Strohfus family meant the 11 of us. Anyway, they were just so good to us, and I am so appreciative. And I stayed in General Hap Arnold's quarters down there in Maxwell Air Force Base, I'm telling you. Boy, that was really great. Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah. And they just treated me so good. This major would come. Here I had all the kids there, but he'd be after me at 6:45 in the morning to go for breakfast with him and all the crowd. Oh, it was wonderful. And then when it was my turn to speak, we all took turns speaking. I spoke on Friday afternoon. And not only do they have the majors going through whatever they were doing, they wanted to get their masters, I believe. And then they had 2,500 students there. I had all those students in the room. They were beautiful young men. Boy, I had a good time talking to them. And so I had just a wonderful time, and they were so gracious to me. And when they gave me that medal, and I got a great big picture like that with 14 people on the picture, and in the middle there's a big place where they have all our pictures, and we even have my picture in the 86. Oh, it was wonderful. The artist was really great. Wasn't he great, Patrick? Yeah. Well, there's my sentimental journey. For me, this is a sentimental journey to tell my story. I hope you appreciate it. And we had then I was a MC for Tom Rokoff down in Austin when they were having something down there. And I've been all over. Maxwell Air Force, Laughlin Air Force Base. Oh, I tell you, and I gave a program when the general had me back, and it's 4 or 5 weeks to give another program for his fellows, whatever they call them, from all over the place. And it was just wonderful. I have had such a wonderful time giving programs, and I am very appreciative of being here talking to all you wonderful young men and women. God bless you all. And God bless America.